we oftentimes say to a lot of our customers, fraud is a symptom of success. If you have a really, really great product or ecosystem, then users or bad actors will try to circumvent and do all sorts of things in order to achieve things that the system does not want them to.
Let's say it's 2030, fast forward 5 years. What does securing digital assets and platforms look like to you?
We're going to see a lot of these really, really, really complicated networks created over the next couple of years.
This episode is brought to you by iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital gives you a great alternative for buying, selling, and custodying your crypto assets. They allow you to set up a self-directed IRA, which gives you huge tax advantages. You can even roll over your 401k to this platform. And they not only offer crypto, they also offer gold and silver. And as mentioned, the custody gives you another very safe alternative. So many of you know about self-custody. That's a great option, but you can also use iTrust Capital's premium custody accounts, also known as PCA. So with the rise of crypto scams and phishing attacks, a lot of retail investors are losing their shirts. I mean, let's be honest, right? It sucks to hear that exchanges are getting hacked. Well, iTrust Capital does things a bit different here. They use Fortis Bank as their qualified custodian. So they're actually using a bank here, and they have partnerships with Coinbase, Prime, Fidelity, and Fireblocks. They are fully US based, and their client experience team offers direct phone support. So not many platforms offer this. This is very unique to iTrust Capital. And folks, most recently, we heard from President Trump that the United States is looking to unlock 401ks to be able to participate in crypto. Well, you can get ahead of the curve by using iTrust Capital and getting started in that process. And folks, I'm a user of the platform. I have an account with them. If you sign up with my link, which is itrustcapital.com/thinkingcrypto, you can get an exclusive $100 funding bonus. So go learn about this great, safe, and awesome way to buy, sell, and custody your crypto. A great alternative, once again, with tax advantages and a lot of safety, very safe compared to many exchanges. And all the links will be in the description. Check it out. Hey folks, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and joining me today is Ido Ben-Natan, who is the co-founder and CEO of Blockaid. Ido, great to have you.
Tony, great to be here.
Excited to dive into Blockaid because you are playing a critical role in securing transactions and platform, and security is so important with this asset class. So I'm excited to dive into the details. But let's start with your background. Where are you from, and what's your professional background?
Yeah, so I grew up in California. My parents are Israeli. They moved there for work. Both engineers. I grew up around computers my whole life. Was programming since a really early age. And then we moved back when I was a little over 16, drafted to these cyber intelligence units, if you're familiar with, in the Israeli army. And then served there for a little over 6 years, primarily working on solving, and finding vulnerabilities in modern operating systems, browsers. And my last gig was around kind of cryptographic implementations, where I spent most of my time. So that's where kind of the love for cryptography came. Ton of team members ended up either starting companies or working for companies that operate kind of in the crypto space, being kind of an incredible application for cryptography. And so kind of leading up to finishing our service, together with my co-founder Roz, we wanted to do something in the space. We thought it was incredibly exciting. We became really passionate about it throughout our military service, from like just users, just like being users in the space. Saw tons of parallels to, we're both kind of computer networking nerds. So saw tons of parallels to the early days of like computer networking. And so we wanted to do something in crypto. We talked to everyone we possibly could. They told us security was a massive problem. And so that's what we built. And it's been almost 3 years since.
That's incredible. Obviously, your pedigree, being in security, cryptography, and much more, and starting this seems like such a natural evolution of your skill sets and so forth. But I'm curious, what was like your first encounter with Bitcoin or and maybe Ethereum or whatever it may be, and what was your aha moment to say, wait a minute, this is something, and we should go build in this space?
Oh man, this is pretty early on. There were a couple of, I guess there were 3 phases in my life where these things happened. I'll talk about 2 maybe, not the first. The first I was pretty young. One of them was around kind of early days of kind of my cybersecurity career before I got drafted, right? Um, spent time with different folks in the industry that were kind of either building or playing with malware, and kind of understanding how these things, what kind of how they kind of interact and operate. Um, and through ransomwares and also kind of how these things are purchased and acquired, not a great highlight of crypto, and I don't think a popular one today. But that was one of the early forays. And then again, it happened continuously kind of throughout my military service, where you deal with kind of cryptography and finding vulnerabilities in cryptographic implementations. And so whenever there are questions about crypto, right? In these like units, in these places, they bubble up and they surface to teams like the one that I was on. And so while not a critical or main part of my role, was always kind of adjacent or kind of came up. But I think the love of it came from just loving cryptography, understanding the space, and kind of going in and into kind of a deeper and deeper hole into how these things work technically.
Oh, absolutely. And I can imagine that you guys started getting maybe bombarded with like lots of crypto stuff as the use of it started growing. It's obviously matured as an asset class and technology, but whether it be good actors, bad actors, everybody started using it in one way or the other.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, the vast, vast, vast majority of users in the space are net positive,
Yeah.
right? I come from a cybersecurity background, so obviously I have to wear that kind of that hat. But yeah, 100%. Like, I think as the space has grown over the past couple of years, we have definitely seen a critical shift kind of in how people think about security, how people, address security challenges, how the ecosystem kind of handles and deals with incidents. And I think it'll just persist, right? As the space becomes more mature, as things, continue to evolve, we will see organizations that will uplift the entire ecosystem and entire industry in how security standards are implemented and how security is treated. And ultimately, I think in a very very just and meaningful way, because when you think about at least today, the products that are built on top of crypto rails are ultimately financial products. And when you think about financial products, a lot of the reasons and differentiation that people choose to use certain financial products as opposed to others is security. And so I think it's, a really, really critical piece of not only you know, not only finance, but also crypto holistically.
Oh, absolutely. So on that note, give us an overview of Blockade. What's your mission and what are the different services you offer?
Yeah, so Blockade works with some of the biggest companies in the space to protect them and their users from fraud, phishing, different kind of hacks across the space. Right. The way that we think about these things and categorize them is both in terms of what we would consider low value, high volume incidents. Right. This is like your phishing links, your scam tokens, your users that are defrauded in whatever ways. These are generally smaller amounts, but happen all the time. Death by a thousand paper cuts. And the other bucket that we think about are high value, low volume incidents, right? They happen all too frequently, but generally higher ticket items affect protocol. This is like a smart contract that gets hacked, that blows up. This is even a phishing incident, right? Which is kind of like Bybit or like a broader cybersecurity incident, um, and many, many others, right? And so we think about both of these categories as the total attack landscape, and the total attack vectors are encapsulated within that. And Blockade aims to cover that holistically. You can kind of think about the technology we built as like this engine that's able to look at transactions or look at entities on the blockchain as they interact with the space, and then alert and find various different incidents and hacks before they take place. Right. So key examples of this are like our work with MetaMask and Coinbase to flag various different, malicious transactions before users interact with them. Um, or it's with, our partners, like, today we announced with Hedera, and we work very closely like with Mistin and other kind of major protocols in the space, to kind of monitor and find various different exploits across their space, and prevent those from happening across different kind of smart contracts and things like that as well too. So really, really kind of taking that kind of core technology and enabling us to prevent these kinds of incidents, both high value and low value, but higher volume, in kind of one holistic solution.
So you have solutions for exchanges, wallets, blockchain protocols. It sounds like, right, because you're working with all these different folks like Coinbase, MetaMask, Miston, and so forth, Hashgraph. So break down at which layer you are. Where does Blockade fit in the tech stack, if you want to call it that, where you are able to monitor these things? Is it an API integration? Is it reviewing the email server? I don't know. Walk us through that process.
Yeah. So technically, I think it's pretty similar. We sit everywhere transactions flow, and so we can look at blockchains passively, right? Just by reading the mempool or indexing the chain, understanding various different transactions that take place. Obviously, contextualizing them to our customers and what they care about. We can sit as it's kind of like an add-on to a wallet, right? So this would be by integrating with various different custodian solutions or self-custodian solutions like Gnosis Safe, Fireblocks, Squads on Solana, and others. And basically living in that transaction flow as like another approver that basically goes and views, simulates, validates transactions, runs it through kind of our policy engine, and kind of spits back, right? Should you execute this or not? And then we also sit inside directly inside of consumer wallets, right? So and we kind of simulate and validate transactions in those cases as well. And we also work with different exchanges to prevent fraud in different interfaces. For example, like the withdrawal functionality, preventing push payment fraud and things like that. So that's kind of like a high level overview. But you can generally plug Blockade in anywhere transactions flow.
Interesting. I mean, you guys, like I said at the beginning, such a critical part of the infrastructure of this asset class. And, with building trust, and we've seen so many hacks and exploits over the years and people getting caught up in phishing scams. We need more of what you're doing to get this industry up to par, maybe with how TradFi has run things. But look, TradFi, there's bad actors in every industry, but I think TradFi has less because they've gone through all the iterations of scams. So maybe what are the common scams and vulnerabilities that you're seeing, and maybe if you can highlight some examples that you stopped.
So I think this is actually a misnomer, right? I think there's actually much more bad actors using dollars
Mm,
than there are bad actors using stable coins,
sure.
right? I mean, when you think about it, it just doesn't make sense. Like, think about like, let's assume for a second, Tony, you and me are money launderers, right? And we're doing some nefarious stuff, and we made a bunch of cash, and now we're trying to wash that, right? You think it's a good idea to go and take $1 million, somehow get it into Coinbase, and then from there, I don't know, move it to some sort of mixer, and then from there, move it to a different exchange, only to get it back into cash. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't like, you go through too many areas of traceability and kind of friction in my mind. Um, the data we see is that most of the illicit activity in crypto comes from crypto. What that means is that it comes from cybersecurity incidents that granted could be adjacent to crypto, like ransomware and things like that. It comes from hacks to different protocols or users. It comes or exchanges. It comes from scams that sometimes onboard victims that aren't related to crypto to these rails because they're better forms of payment infrastructure. And that's where the majority of the illicit activity comes from, in my mind. Sorry for maybe taking us off a tangent here, but so I think as a percentage of general activity of illicit actors, crypto is a very, very small piece of that, right? And I think TradFi, while it has tried to, um, you know, I think ultimately has not zeroed this out. Right? We oftentimes say to a lot of our customers, like, fraud is a symptom of success.
Mm,
Uh, if if you have a really, really great product or ecosystem, then users or bad actors will try to circumvent and do all sorts of things in order to achieve things that the system does not want them to. Right? I think we can simple things is just like kids cutting in line. right? There's a line. Sometimes it's not even with like super nefarious activity, like in activities in mind. You just want to do something that the system otherwise doesn't want you to do. Um, and so, yeah, so fraud is like is like it's something we want to squash, but it's generally like a symptom of success.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're having success, you become an instant target, right? You get this target.
Exactly, exactly.
I read that you guys have scanned like 2.4 billion transactions in the last year. How are you able to maintain tell us a bit about your team and your operations to handle big clients like Coinbase. And you mentioned a Hashgraph and then working with MetaMask. And then I think there was also Gemini, the crypto exchange.
Yeah,
How
we
are
just
you able
announced.
to, yeah, how are you able to handle all that?
Yeah, we process a ton of transactions. We process, I think, like a couple months ago was over 500 million transactions on a given month. And so, when you think about our team, right? One, we served with some of the world's kind of best hackers in these like cyber intelligence units um, that have built software to kind of interact and kind of that is deployed across the country's most critical missions. And so that same team is the one behind this really critical piece of infrastructure that's able to secure probably most end users today in a lot of applications, right? And so, we build things in mind in a way where it's like, we know some of our earliest customers, we're some of the largest companies in the space. And so it's basically forced us to build things in a way that is incredibly scalable. And is able to kind of support their kind of their growth and their and their user base. What obviously becomes harder over time is as obviously security threats, target these different kind of customers across our network, is understanding and piecing those things together and closing those gaps incredibly quickly and making sure our customers are secure in the most meaningful way possible. But that thing that is really hard also makes the product really great. Because we see these threat actors across the you know the extent of our network, we're able to go and really, really quickly apply all those different security learnings to all of our customers basically instantly. And so, when one more kind of customer joins, for example, like we announced Hashgraph today, and we announced Gemini today. So they benefit from that extensive power of the broader network that we have in our kind of ecosystem. And so it's really, really great to see how that's been playing out.
Oh, sure. So you can essentially share learnings like, oh, hey, Coinbase got attacked in this way. You can automatically alert the other exchanges to watch out for X or Y or whatever it may be.
It's almost implicit, right? It's like, our engine takes these different threats, understands them, and then applies them holistically to everyone, right? And so we don't have to go and call anyone up, right? It's like, it just kind of happens.
Interesting. Are you providing any type of security training to these firms as well?
So we work really, really closely with our customers, right? On Slack, on Telegram, with them 24 hours a day, 365. Many of our customers see us as like an extension of their security team. And so, while we don't have any courses on YouTube today, or things like that, I think a lot of our customers will say that, we spend a ton of time with them and work to educate them. And we put out a ton of content, right? Like, across the space about new and novel kinds of techniques and hacks. So not only our customers do, but also, independent people or people across the industry or ecosystem that, want to benefit from these kinds of learnings. Yeah, for sure.
Hmm. Two-part question. Are you using AI in any way to help assist in managing the securities for these platforms? And two, do you see AI agents or so being a threat, and also introducing new securities threats and vulnerabilities?
Yeah, I think it's core to everything we do, right? Like, whether that's in our detection capabilities, understanding what transactions, are going to do, understanding various different types of threats and uncovering those, whether that's across our understanding of various different other attack vectors that are adjacent to the space. Um, we go through this extensive process of scanning websites to find various different threat actors that are leveraging those for scams, for fraud, for all sorts of different things. And so we definitely use various different AI agents and LLMs to basically, understand what these sites are doing and categorize them in different ways. And of course, it's in our development process and how we kind of go and write code and execute and ship things much, much faster. So yeah, AI is core to everything that we do across our company. Um, as far as, you could think about, how AI empowers attackers, it's actually pretty sophisticated. It's pretty crazy, right? Like one, it's much easier to build malware and build, software today. And so just like deploying new and novel variants of various different things, it just gets that much easier, right? And so that game of cat and mouse just, accelerates and the bar to entry just lowers. We went through kind of a funny exercise, right, internally. How quickly can you go and kind of spin up, a fake phishing website and kind of do this thing? How quickly can you go and see some sort of like, smart contract that's exploited, copy the attacker bytecode, and then kind of repurpose it for your own from your own use, right? You can use these LM agents really, really quickly to kind of go and build these things out. And so definitely it's lowered the bar for attackers to enter the space, 100%. And so I think that, all security teams, not only in crypto, but across kind of the entire world, need to understand that it's just become easier to do the things that you could have in the past. And so we think the result of that is just that there will be more of them. And so, when we see that in practice.
Yeah, and most recently, I think it was on Reddit, I saw someone post a phishing, site, a clone of Coinbase, and I don't know if the person identified it, and they were saying this is probably generated by AI, or whatever it may be, because it looks so similar. Like, they usually sometimes if you're a bit sophisticated, you can see some flaws on the page and so forth, right? But AI, to your point, will help make it easier, lower the barrier to entry, and to spin these phishing sites up, and it will be perfect, in a sense, of an exact clone.
Yeah, 100%. Like we see this all the time. It takes seconds to do. And so, like I said, it's just become easier. And so we'll see many, many more of them.
In comparison to other security firms in the industry, what are your differentiators, and where do you think you have the advantage? And on maybe a twofold question, there is also, what's your vision? Do you want to see Blockade be kind of that security layer for all Web3 transactions?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, I think holistically, like the way I view this is that, and we have, we're lucky to be in a space with incredibly talented competitors as well too.
Mm.
But where we stand out and where we differentiate is one, I think the caliber of team that we've been able to amass is just like by far incredibly, it's incredible, like the talent. We're I think everyone that comes in every single day to Blockade is incredibly excited to work alongside the people that are here. I think, it's that network of customers that gives us that ability to have, this incredible data that's able to kind of power all of these things. And I think, the last piece of it is I think that, we've been around, in the space for so long and have seen so much, like, through the work and through kind of these different things and, care so much about our customers that we really kinda give a tailored experience, around every single kind of deployment, every single kind of integration, that I think other people just don't in this space. And I think our customers would definitely say that, right? That working with us, is kind of, incredibly rewarding. You asked, if we go and share these kinds of things and stuff like that, if there's learnings or trainings or stuff like that, I think the folks that work with us definitely learn a lot more, and kind of leave much more secure. And so that's kind of how I see us against kind of some of our competitors across the space. And I think ultimately, like when you compare, there's no comparison, right?
Mm.
When you go in, put a side by side, ultimately, the experience with us is pretty phenomenal.
And most recently, I read that you guys secured a $50 million Series B funding led by Ribbit Capital. So you're getting additional funding, you're scaling your business is kind of what's happening right now?
Yeah, so I think, the space is growing incredibly quickly. There's a ton of demand for not just security, but all kinds of infrastructure across crypto. We see this across all the parts of our business, right? All our users are expanding. All of our, you know, all of our customers are kind of growing in scale and number of transactions. And so, yeah, I think the way for us to keep up is definitely, working harder, growing the team, and just like, continuing to support this ecosystem.
Mm. Let's say, okay, it's 2030, fast forward 5 years, right? What does securing digital assets and platforms look like to you?
I think there's two questions there, because one, it's what does the industry look like in 2030, right? Like what is there, and then what do you secure, right? I saw this tweet after kind of the Circle's new chain kind of announcement, around how you're a merchant, receiving payment from your customers, in USDC on Circle's new chain. But your payment terminal only receives, right, Stripe USD on Stripe chain, and then you have to go and pay, but you custody with Bank of America, and so you have to take Bank of America USD and put that on B of A chain, and then you have to pay your vendors, but they're on JP chain with JP coin. Um, and so I think like what's incredible is that a lot of that, and that's just again one use case for payments, will be seamless, but will happen, right? And so we're gonna see a lot of these like really, really, really complicated networks created over the next couple of years. And that sounds kind of crazy and scary, because a lot of folks in crypto today are consumers. Um, but that's actually like the level of complexity is actually not terrifying or horrible if you have applications that abstract it, right? Like we shouldn't care that that's what's happening. We should see a dollar here and a dollar there, and that's it, right? And everything should take care of itself behind the scenes. And for that to happen really, really securely, you need a really, really great security layer to go in and kind of just like encapsulate these different things, right? And so I'm a big fan of kind of early day internet. And so when you think about the early days of the internet, that kind of scary, um, you know, complicated network that I just described is actually not too dissimilar than how the internet works today, right? Many people don't know this, but like, in crypto, we talk about bridges, for moving money from one network to another. On the internet, those things are called routers, and people don't know, but routers actually used to be called bridges, and the bridge between two networks. And the early days of what we now think about as the internet started with what were called, or what still are called, local area networks, or LANs, right? These are just like a couple computers connected to one another. And as things grew and as networks became connected to one another, you had to connect multiple LANs. Those became WANs, wide area networks. And so you can kind of think about your metropolis network, right? That connects multiple houses together, becoming like a wide area network. And between every single one of those LANs to those WANs is a bridge, right? And between those WANs to other WANs, there's other bridges. And there were firewalls and all sorts of other security products that were introduced to go and protect those networks in different ways, whether that's blocking and filtering different transactions. There were all sorts of pieces of antivirus that were introduced to network connected computers, to block and filter out these different things. And today, what happens, like quite literally, is like for an internet connected device to connect to transfer information to a server, it doesn't go through one hop, right? It goes through 7 or 8 on average, and that all happens in milliseconds, incredibly quickly, and incredibly securely. And so, you ask kind of, so that's how I think about the space in 2030. Where I think Blockade fits in is at every single part in that space and every single part in that stack, providing security solutions for our customers to ultimately make that thing happen, in a way where, one, you definitely don't see it happening and you don't care that money is moving in these different ways,
Yeah.
and two, in a way that you're definitely not worried you're going to lose all your money, and that it won't ever reach its destination, and that maybe it'll reach the wrong destination, or maybe some contract that it's touching will blow up. And I think a lot of the core products that we're building today, fit into those things really, really nicely, both pre and post transaction, to continuously kind of cover the space.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. I think there's a lot of parallels and comparisons between how the internet works and how it grew and where crypto's at now. Yeah, we won't necessarily be thinking about how it works, just that it works. And that's going to be for the majority of the population. Um, Obviously, those who are tech savvy and very much in the weeds with crypto and blockchain will kind of understand how the back end works, but majority of people, they just need to know it works.
100%.
Yeah. What's on your roadmap? I know you talked a lot about, the things you guys are working on, but anything else you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot. Actually, like, through the conversation, a lot of our roadmap. I think, customers have come to learn about Blockade, through our kind of, pre-transaction simulation validation engines inside of wallets. We do a lot more than that, right? Around, monitoring for different kind of exploits across smart contracts. We do a lot more than that in terms of working with different, institutional and enterprise customers to through our co-signing product, which basically is like a co-approver for transactions across these different wallets, leveraging the same kind of technology in our wallet, in our kind of consumer wallet business. And we do a lot more with different exchanges to detect various different kinds of fraud and things like that. The roadmap is basically just continuing to kind of execute across those product categories, and continuing to serve our customers in the best way we possibly can.
Oh, very cool. I would love to get your thoughts on, what's happening overall in the crypto market. Obviously, we had the Genius Act passed into law. That's huge for the stablecoin market. We got the Market Structure Bill, the Clarity Act, coming up for a vote in September. What are your thoughts on legislation being passed, this industry getting the clarity it needs, and its TradFis coming in, and much more?
So we talked to a ton of customers across the space. I think, Genius is an incredible piece of legislation because before it, crypto was literally lawless. Like there were no crypto laws, and so you could argue how much of the Wild West it is, but it was literally lawless. And so whether Genius itself changes a lot or a little for the space in practice, I think it changes everything because it's just the first crypto law. And then the second part of that, and we talked to a ton of customers across the space, a ton of institutions. There is a lot. So we're seeing the activity on chain grow, right? One metric we look at is kind of the movement between activity on centralized exchanges to dexes on chain, and we've seen that grow 10% over the past 10 months and 10% over the year beforehand. And so this is a metric that's been growing regardless of market cyclicality. And what's kind of incredibly exciting to see and hear is while you see that kind of metric moving, when we talk to some of the largest institutions in the world, one thing that they're worried about before moving on chain, even when we talk to some institutions that are already operating in crypto but just on centralized exchanges, they're really looking out for the clarity bill to pass and the market structure bill to pass before they go and kind of are much more involved in DeFi and much more involved on chain. And so I think that's really really exciting, and we're going to see a massive unlock there in terms of what that does to both institutions that are not currently active, but also institutions that are active, just not in DeFi or not as active on chain, right? And so I'm really 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 excited about that. There was an executive order passed. There were two executive orders passed, from the White House. We were really really excited about the first one. Predominantly, they had a whole section on security, which is incredibly exciting to see kind of this shift and I think this shift is beginning to start, right? Legislators, I think today a lot about the market, or a lot about crypto as just another network of moving money, but it's also a network of computers. And so when they think about it from the prism of a network of moving money, they think about illicit finance. And I think a lot of us think about it because we've been trained to think about it this way. Actually, when we kind of peel the onion a little bit more and try to look at like what is that illicit finance and where does it originate from, a lot of it is cybersecurity and fraud related. And so we're really excited to see kind of regulators start to talk about cybersecurity and fraud related pieces of legislation, which I actually think are much more meaningful than illicit finance to the space holistically. Like a funny anecdote is like when you think about the internet, right? The internet, moves money too, right? You have credit cards there and things like that. And so, no one's asking a user before they enter a website to kind of KYC, right? Across the internet, right? And it's because they don't view this in the realm of like illicit finance, but they do. But there are legislation around big enough businesses around data security and access management and cybersecurity controls, because they know that it's prone to these different risks, and those risks lead to these bad outcomes. What I think kind of the space has not yet understood fully is that if we solve our cybersecurity challenges, we will actually solve a lot of our illicit finance challenges. And so that's what we're really excited about, like from some of the new legislation that's coming out in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And the services you guys provide, are you able to provide this to even TradFi institutions like banks who are now getting involved in crypto? They want to build their own blockchain, integrate blockchain.
100%. 100%. Yeah. So like we work with a bunch of traditional finance customers too. We can't mention many of them. But yeah, we 100% do. Many are kind of, dipping their toes in, and some I think are going to dive headfirst. I think a lot of them are waiting and looking to see, some of the pieces of legislation and what kind of unfolds. But, I think as with a lot of technology shifts, it may take longer, but it'll be bigger than people think.
Oh, absolutely. I got some wrap-up questions here for you.
Oh yeah.
First, if you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
A metaverse where no cybersecurity incidents take place. I don't know exactly what that means. Probably like the exact opposite of like the Matrix. I don't know.
Rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
I like a burger.
Favorite musician or band?
I'm a fan of the Arctic Monkeys.
Favorite movie?
I'll give you the favorite movie I saw recently, maybe the Fantastic Four, the new Marvel one.
Favorite book?
I'm a huge fan of Asimov.
When you're not working at Blockade, what are you doing for fun?
Dude, working at Blockade is incredibly fun. That's what I do. If I'm not working at Blockade, maybe I'm working out.
Oh, okay. Cool, cool. Great stuff. And like I said at the beginning, you guys are a core part of the infrastructure for this asset class to continue to mature and function well. Security is, of course, one of those pillars. So I'm looking forward to the future updates. But thank you so much for joining me.
Tony, a pleasure. Thank you so much.